Welcome to Anything Cricket. Let's talk.
Don't let annoying pests bug you. Lick them for 6. Omega Pest Control is the perfect solution. We are experts in termite and pest eradication, specialized mosquito treatments, foundation, residential, commercial, and industrial treatments. Call us day or night or visit us at our office located at Fieldside Drive, Long Gaps in Michael. Omega Pest Control. Call 425-5954, 231-6526, or email us at opcl@caribsurf.com.
Have your most precious moments captured in a flash. Call Flash Drive Media, specialists in photography, videography, and streaming services, and much more. Call Flash Drive Media. Healing, nourishing, restoring. Amazing products, essential to provide healthy skin. My kind of beauty. Let it be yours.
First of all, let me say a genuine thank you to all of our loyal viewers and followers who stayed with us throughout our technical challenges in our live episode last week. As promised, we prepared an edited version of that episode for you. But before that, Roland Butcher will join us to discuss lots of the West Indies cricket action over the last few days and some upcoming action. So, when we come back, we'll start with Roland Butcher and then that edited version of last week's episode.
Have your most precious moments captured in a flash. Call Flash Drive Media, specialists in photography, videography, and streaming services, and much more. Call Flash Drive Media.
Always good to have the company of Roland Butcher, the former international cricketer. I always hesitate when I'm describing you, Roland, because I don't know, it doesn't always sit perfectly to say former England international, and I can't say former West Indies cricketer. So I tend to always hesitate when it comes out there. But no doubt, the former pro, played a lot of county cricket, a lot of first-class cricket, international cricket for England. But at least you've given your best years, your administrative years, et cetera, to West Indies cricket. Welcome to the program again, Roland.
Thank you, Philip. Always a pleasure to be on the show, and looking forward to the discussion.
Yes, talking about discussion and giving your best years, you retired a year or two ago from your main position, let's say, at UWA, where you would have contributed so much to their success over the years in cricket. But you've not been idle. You wrote a book, albeit about football, and now you're into another project. Hopefully, the girls, women's cricket, will benefit from this project. Tell us about it, Roland.
Yeah, the current project, Philip, is it will be actually next Monday, the 24th, is when we will actually have the distribution. But the women's project that we're talking about really is that myself, through the Roland Butcher Cricket Academy, has partnered with Bat for a Chance, a UK charity that supports needy persons overseas with cricketing equipment, etc., etc. I've partnered with them on a project here to develop women's cricket in Barbados. As you know, women's cricket around the world now is a very big thing, and it's very much on the up. And particularly here in Barbados, we've had a lot of success with the women cricketers. Currently, there's probably about 6 or 7 in the West Indies team, but I don't think you can sit on your laurels and believe that that will continue all the time. As you know, there's not a great deal coming through when this current crop of good Barbadian players leave the scenes. So I think it's very important that starting really from the primary schools, that you have to encourage girls to play cricket and to see that cricket is a viable industry for them as well. Even if they don't make it to the top, it is still something that the girls can play and enjoy. So the partnership really with Bat for a Chance means that we will be supplying, we've chosen 3 girls' schools in Barbados: Springer Memorial, Christchurch Girls, Hinesbury Foundation, Hinesbury Primary School, and also the UWE Women's outfit, to give them equipment, etc., to help move the game forward. So that is something that I'm very, very proud of. And you know, Bat for a Chance were only too pleased when I discussed that with them, to be involved with this particular venture.
Well, that's certainly a very good venture. What are schools again? You say you're starting with? You're starting with Springer Memorial, Hinesbury Primary, UWA, and there was there's a school.
Christchurch Girls.
Yeah. So how are you going to negotiate COVID? I mean, yes, they're going to have the equipment. That's great. But in this COVID environment, when there has been very little cricket, and as far as I'm aware, no school cricket, how do you plan to counter that?
Well, basically, you're going to have to see how things develop in terms within the country when, you know, the schools are back at school and etc. I don't expect that we've been in COVID forever. At some point in time, we're going to have to get back out there, whether it's with COVID or COVID goes away. So at some point in time, you know, you'll be back out there. So women's cricket is going to continue as a game around the world. So, you know, you cannot fall too far behind. As you know, right now, we're falling behind in the Caribbean, certainly in terms of domestic cricket. As you know, we haven't had anything really for 2 years, and that's going to affect us. So if you allow women's cricket to go even further than that, you know, you can see what's going to happen in the future. So, you know, basically, as you know, the government, the ministry, the COVID people, etc., will decide when it is the opportune time for things to go back at schools. And really, you know, the idea going forward for us is that, you know, we're also looking in the future to be putting coaches into schools to develop the game, you know, starting from softball right away through the hardball, and try and get a really good development program going initially in those 3 schools, because, you know, we really picked up those girls' schools as somewhere to start.
You've got to make a start somewhere. You mentioned women's cricket playing around the world, and that includes the West Indies, off to South Africa, a tournament that I suppose a form of preparation, if you will, for the upcoming World Cup.
Yeah, it's going to be very good practice for the West Indies, for sure. It's going to be tough practice because, as you know, South Africa beat us quite easily here in the Caribbean. Now, going in South Africa under their conditions, it's a very tough assignment, but it's going to be good preparation for the West Indies. 1, to be playing against a very strong team, and 2, also playing in their backyard.
Yes, so the women playing in South Africa. And, you know, we mentioned that there's been no cricket really, or very little regional cricket over the last 2 years, hardly any in Barbados as well. But the international cricket hasn't really stopped. And you've got the Under-19 World Cup going right now as well. West Indies off to a very disappointing start last week, losing the opening game, but did well to bounce back to beat Scotland. And now look forward to seeing what will happen against Sri Lanka.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to win the games in front of you. But obviously, the game against Scotland was a must-win game because Scotland is not one of the stronger teams in the competition. There will be much tougher games to come. So, you know, you've got to win games like that. It's not going to be an easy task for the West Indies because, you know, they've now got really the tough teams to play. So they're going to have to improve their cricket substantially, really, to see themselves going a lot further in the tournament. But you know, it's nice to get those couple of wins, albeit against the weaker teams.
Well, a couple. We've only got one so far. Looking, I would think to try to win the next encounter. But what concerns me though, the batting problems that let's say that we saw in the warm-up games certainly followed them into the tournament because the performance against Australia was very disappointing indeed.
Well, Philip, listen, we all know that we have batting problems in this region, really from top to bottom. So I wouldn't really expect that our younger players at this juncture, would they really be any different to our senior players? You know, our system currently is one that, you know, we're currently producing players, you know, who are not of the highest quality, and that's a system failure. So, you know, these under 19 will have also come up during that period. So the same frailties that you see with our senior team, you know, you will see with the under 19s. The batting failures, you know, the batting letting you down from time to time, you know, the lapses in the field, you know, the inability to really dominate spin. You know, these are things that we see right through our cricket system. So, you know, I'm not really expecting that in this tournament that we will change the outlook of West Indies cricket. I think it's going to take a lot more than this and a lot more time for that to happen.
What disappointed me was not just the whole debate and issue of technique, but game awareness. And you know, technique, yes, it can be taught, and as you would know, there's a part of it, a big part of it too, that is natural, if you will, that's built into you, and maybe the coach can just bring out what is really there, so to speak. But game awareness, to my mind, is something that you should be able to teach and that you should be able to acquire. And one of the most disappointing moments for me in that contest was the dismissal of the captain O'Geese, because he batted well with Clark to retrieve a situation that was pretty bad. And then Clark was dismissed, followed quickly by, I think it was the Pisa, but a couple of wickets fell quickly. And then he opted to try to slug sweep and was caught on the mid-wicket boundary. Stood there for quite a while, pondering what he had done. But really and truly, I was really disappointed. Even for an under-19 player, I would have thought that game awareness should have told him with, I think, about what, nearly 30 overs left at that point, a lot of overs left at that point, that he needed to just stay there and pick up the singles and so on. And it would have been plenty time later on to try to go over mid-wicket.
Well, Philip, you see, it's inexperience with these young players. But what you've outlined there, have you seen that at the senior level?
I've seen it at the senior level too often.
You most certainly have. You know, so as I said, you know, these youngsters don't come up in a vacuum. You know, they come up in this same system. They see it happening at that level as well. You know, so they're going to make those sort of mistakes currently. It's going to be disappointing for you because you would have imagined that in that circumstance, they would have made a different decision. But, you know, they're still young, they're still inexperienced. They haven't played a lot of hard cricket, and most of them would have had very little or no longer form cricket to learn the game. You know, if you get to 19 and you're not playing or you haven't played a lot of long form cricket, it is very difficult to learn the game. You know, the difference with the Indians is that, you know, India school cricket is played over days, you know, 2, 3, 4 days they play their school cricket. So from a very young age, you know, their batsmen learn how to bat long. The bowlers learn how to bowl long spells. So when they get to the under 19 level, and we see it often in World Cup, during the World Cups, you look at India's and you see 2 or 3 players that you know for sure is going to be playing in an India setup in the next year or 2. And generally, what you also find is that some of those under 19 players in the Indian side are current first-class cricketers. And they have learned that through, you know, the longer form of the game at school level. In the Caribbean, as you know, our guys play 50 over, T20, and it's always about getting on with the game. So you never ever learn, you know, how to build an innings, you know, how to see out a good spell by a fast bowler or a spinner, bide your time. It's always a rush to score. So, you know, our players will develop bad habits from a young age. And, you know, hence the problems that we see even at the international level.
Well, I can't really fault your thinking there at all, really. My only concern would be that we don't continue to make excuses for these youngsters to them. You know, and therefore, I think we still need to hold them accountable to some extent because, yes, I recognize the shortcomings in terms of just playing white ball cricket pretty much and so on. But as I said, game awareness, you still got to, and especially the captain, and I don't mean the captain because the captain is necessarily your best player. I believe that at that level, as should be at any level, you are selecting a captain not necessarily because he's the best batsman or bowler, but because he has maybe a superior understanding of the game and so on. And that's why I really would have hoped that in that role, he would have recognized, you know, the importance of staying there. I don't say that to ridicule him at all, Roland. I'm highlighting it because it's something that I think needs to be nipped in the bud. You asked me if I've ever seen that at the senior level. Of course I have. And the senior players who are now senior would have been doing it at the junior level. And obviously it hasn't been addressed because they continue to do it at the senior level. The youngsters coming up are also doing it. And it's not just a matter of the COVID issue and not much cricket being played because we know this problem existed before. I think you're bang on the money though when you talk about the short form cricket. And years ago, I suggested to influencers, if you will, those who are party to decisions being made about how sport is played in primary school, how cricket is played. I suggested that while I understand the difficulty in playing cricket, a match, let's say, that would last a number of days because of the challenges in school. Sometimes, as PE teachers will tell you, it's difficult to get the children for an hour for a football match, or less a couple of days for cricket. But what about if you start rewarding things other than winning? Rewarding a team for batting the 20 or 30 overs, things of that nature. I haven't really seen any structured effort to do things like that at the junior level.
Well, you're absolutely right. And if it continues like that, Philip, I mean, you will not see that sort of development that you want to see. I mean, my personal view in relation to junior cricket, particularly, you know, we make a big thing in Barbados about under 11 cricket, under 11 age of age cricket. And as you know, through the competitions that we run at school level, it really is all about trying to win the competition, which yes, to me it's a crazy thing to do because, you know, kids are not young adults. So at age 11 or under 11, you know, you're putting so much pressure on these young players to perform individually, to perform as a team. You know, you put them under pressure if they don't perform. It makes no sense whatsoever. For me, at that age group, really, the way the game should be played is that you know, each week, you know, a different player should open the batting, or a different player should bat at number 3, or keep wicket, etc. Because that's a phase where you're learning the game. You know, you cannot specialize at 11 that I'm an opening batsman, or I'm a left arm spin bowler, or I'm the opening bowler. At age 11, No. At that age, you should be finding out and experiencing all of these things: batting, bowling, fielding, wicket keeping. When you get 15, 16, you or the game would have made up for you what is your best position, and then you specialize. Now you have a much better chance then of developing into a top class player than, to me, being put as an opener at school at 11, and my coach is telling me at school, you are the opening batsman, and I'm stuck in that position. I may not be an opening batsman, but for the school wants me to be an opening batsman. You know what happens? 3 years later, those guys don't want to see the game because they haven't got the success that they
Or the enjoyment.
Yep, or the enjoyment. And enjoyment comes with success.
I think the enjoyment at that age is probably even more important than the success. Because children, young people tend to do things, and this is not to say that older people don't. Older people may have the capacity to do something because it's necessary. So you may hate your job, but you've got to pay your bills. So you get up and you go to work faithfully every day, and you are on time too. A young child does something because he enjoys it. So if he doesn't enjoy it, he's not going to do it.
Well, absolutely. I mean, listen, kids' world is fun and games, and it should be fun and games. It shouldn't be pressure to win, to perform. It should be one of the experimentation, learning from their mistakes, and enjoying what they're doing. And I think quite often we take the joy out of the game for the youngsters, makes it far too formal, and puts them under tremendous pressure. And in the end, they will rebel because if they don't get the success, they will walk away from the game. And at the end of the day, the game of cricket is going to suffer when you keep losing those players. For me, make it much more enjoyable. Don't put any expectations on the kids. Let them play, let them enjoy, and we'll get the rewards. I know times have changed from my time for it because, as a kid, we played a lot of long form cricket as kids, even though it was informal. And why we say long form cricket is that, as you would know, after school, you would start your game, and when you're batting, you would aim by the end of the day to still be batting, so that the next day, when you start playing again, that you continue your innings. So, that was developing also your long form game, even though it was an informal thing between friends. But obviously times have changed now, and we need to organize things for youngsters. But I think at the moment, just organizing T20 and 40 over, 50 over cricket, we're really doing these kids a disservice.
And while we're on the subject of enjoyment, let me skip back to women's cricket. You talked about making children specialize too early could cause us to lose them. And it reminded me of a conversation I had with a bunch of guys about women's cricket. And I warned in that conversation about this preoccupation with fitness, which in regional terms, Barbadian terms for sure, in regional terms, John Public, when he's talking about fitness, he's usually talking about size. Now, I'm not saying that fitness and size are the same. I know better, and I know that you know better. What I'm saying is that many people, when they talk about fitness, in other words, you listen to the typical commentator, and he's talking about a guy's girth and all sorts of rubbish, and then he talks about fitness. So the person who doesn't know any better will think that they're one and the same. All right.
Yeah.
And I call it a preoccupation. I've heard some comments made nearly every time women's cricket is discussed. West Indies women's cricket, people are talking about the size of these girls, and I was saying to them that women and men are different and respond to things differently. And apart from that, you've got maybe more men available to play cricket than women. You're now trying to get women interested. And if young girls and young women are not, don't fit into this profile, this pencil slim profile of fitness, and you keep bashing this, it is not going to encourage, it will discourage females from getting involved in the sport. And they are already discouraged by other factors. I'm not saying this because I feel like saying it. I'm saying this from years of association with young women. And when I say young women, I'm talking about school age especially. And therefore, I know what I'm saying. And I really think we need to guard against it. That preoccupation extends to the men. However, I think it is more harmful when we keep looking at these young ladies out there trying to do their best, and because they're not pencil slim, they don't fit into that profile. You're making all these unnecessary comments. I don't know how you feel about it.
No, I think you're right. You're right. I think you're absolutely right. Your assessment. Yes, you know, we do tend to have girls in the Caribbean of a bigger build than most countries, particularly at the younger age. But I think it's also a time where you can make the games enjoyable for the girls, despite their size. You know, you can always work on their flexibility, etc., because you can be big and flexible and athletic. I mean, and I can give you a very good example. I mean, when I was coach of Bermuda, and obviously you know Bermuda quite well, Dwayne Leverock. I mean,
Yes.
if you saw the size of Dwayne Leverock, but if you talk about in terms of fitness and agility and flexibility, he was far superior to all the other players. I mean, in training, you know, you would imagine by looking at Dwayne Leverock, he would be the one at the back of the queue, somewhere behind the others. It was the other way around. He led the group. You know, he was big, but
He was huge.
Yeah, he was huge, but he was very fit, very athletic, very.
Would he have done 40 on a yo-yo test?
Absolutely.
He would have.
Without a doubt.
Okay.
There would be no question about that. He would do that easily. You know, obviously, I think his profession also would have assisted him. You know,
I think he was a police officer, wasn't he?
He was a police officer.
Yes, yes.
So he would have had to do a lot of training. But I'm telling you, he was one of, if not the one of my fittest guys. I mean, and you know, terrific cricketer. But his size. So the point I'm just really trying to make is that, you know, we mustn't put into the girls' head, particularly when they're young, you know, that they're big and can't play the game, because not all of them are going to be international cricketers, but if they can get enjoyment, self-esteem, confidence, and some fun, you know, from playing the sport, that's enough. You know, the ones who have got the opportunity and the skill, etc., to go on beyond that, that is fine. But let's give them all an opportunity.
Well, I did say it was just skipping back to the women's game to make a point, but let's get back to the under 90s, not necessarily from the point of view of the West Indies now, but you said, you know, the youngsters should be able to open the batting, they should be able to bat in the middle order, keep wicket, ball spin, ball pace. You didn't quite say that one particular youngster, the same youngster should be able to bowl with his left hand and his right hand as well. But the Australians seem to have that theory, because there's a guy called Radhakrishnan, I believe is his name, and that's just what he does. He bowls right arm off spin and left arm spin as well. Yeah,
he really is, I guess, one in a million, because he does both very well. I mean, he's a very good off-spin bowler, and also a very good left arm around the wicket spin bowler. You know, when you see him bowl both, you wouldn't say, well, he's a part-timer in one. You know, he looks the genuine article in both. But I think he's a rarity. I don't think you'll get too many like him. But it's a good thing to have in the team, because you know, unfortunately, you can only bowl from one end. But you know, if you've got an off spinner bowling the other end, you know, you can change it up by having a left arm spinner the other end, and he can provide that, and vice versa. So I think he's a pretty valuable member of the Australian team.
I heard him mention in a recent interview that he believes he should be able to switch from one to the other without having to inform the umpire.
Well, I don't think so, because as you know, when you come into bat, the umpire says, Philip, left arm over or right arm over. He doesn't just stand there and let you bowl from where you want to bowl.
But his argument is that the batsmen don't have to tell the umpire when they're going to switch it.
Well, I mean, that is...
You're a batsman, so I mean, I am not surprised that you would that he would lead in favor of the batsman.
Well, no, I mean, it is. I mean, can you imagine a guy starts his run up over the wicket, and then when he approaches the umpire, he ducks around the other side and ball around the wicket. You know,
well, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that he would want that, because that would present some realistic problems with the non-striker. I think he was more concerned about being able to bowl with the left hand or the right hand, but clearly would have to indicate which side he's going to bowl from, purely unless you recreate your regulations and the batsman has to stand wide regardless. So there will be some clear problems in terms of not informing the umpire which side you're going to bowl. But I think he was more arguing that he should be able to bowl with either hand, even if he's restricted to over the wicket or around the wicket for that period of time.
I mean, I don't believe that there's a problem within an over. Say, for instance, he's being faced by a left-handed batsman.
Mm.
I do not believe that anything would stop him from saying to the umpire, right arm round the wicket as an off-spinner and bowling that. So the batsman gets a single and he goes down the other end, and it's a right-handed batsman. I think he would be justified in saying to the umpire, left arm round in the over, and bowl the next ball left arm round. I don't believe that you could stop that. I haven't seen anything that says.
Without the umpire having to tell the batsman.
Well, I mean, I think you'd have to tell the umpire. The umpire would have to say to the batsman.
Yeah, but does the umpire have to tell the batsman?
Yes, the umpire will have to say left arm round.
But that's what he's talking about, you see. But anyhow, I mean, I suppose as the game evolves, that may or may not change. Who knows? Some of the things that we have. I mean, when you play Test cricket, Roland, many years ago when I was a boy, watching on, I don't know if you thought at that point, or maybe you did, because maybe the thinking may have been different, in your environment. But I don't know how many people imagine that you would have a Test match played at night with a pink ball.
Well, I would say the early part of my career, definitely not. I don't think anybody would have thought of that, and certainly not before Kerry Packer. Really, when Kerry Packer came on the scene, that really was the game being revolutionized to the point where we are at now. I did play quite early in my career. I did play a night game here in Barbados at the stadium.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that game.
Yeah, very, very early on. So, it was something that was thought about, but I think Kerry Packer really made it a real possibility.
Yeah, but I'm talking about even then though, with the white ball playing limited overs cricket, I don't know if he ever imagined he would reach a pink ball on a Test match. So all I'm saying is that who knows what is ahead for this amazing game. But Roland, I purposely kept the best for last, best in inverted commas though, because this may cause some of our viewers to leave us what we're going to talk about next. We're going to talk about the series between Ireland and West Indies, won by Ireland. And I'm going to get your take on that when we come back on Anything Cricket. Let's talk.
Have your most precious moments captured in a flash. Call Flash Drive Media, specialists in photography, videography, and streaming services, and much more. Call Flash Drive Media.
So Roland, Ireland 2, West Indies 1. Were you surprised?
Yes, Philip, I'll tell you, I was surprised. I really believe that West Indies would win against Ireland for two reasons. Number one, you're playing against an inferior opponent in terms of your history of the game. And number two, you're playing at home, which really should be your fortress. So on those two counts. And then also, if you took players, I guess, man for man, you would believe that West Indies, who are a far more experienced international team than Ireland, would be able to beat Ireland in the Caribbean. And as you saw, that really was not the case, and it was very, very disappointing.
You said inferior opponent, and I understand. I can't argue with you because they're ranked a couple of notches below West Indies in the format. But how inferior really? I mean, if you look at it, this youngster Tector has done very well. Paul Sterling, who would probably raise a few eyebrows were he to play for West Indies because of his size, is averaging something like 38 in white ball. The only players off the top of my head we have who will be anywhere near up there, well, who would have surpassed that would be Evan Lewis, Puran, and Hope. And those three, none of them would be in the type of form that Tector is in right now. Or much celebrated captain and the man who's played so much white ball cricket all around the world, and you know that West Indians big up so much, is averaging 24, 25. He averages around there. Paul Sterling 38, and he bowls as well and takes some good catches. You know, so I just put that in there to remind us that we got to look past this size foolishness and look at the cricket skills and see how people are really performing, and stop looking at things that are only by virtue of appearance. It's runs and wickets that win cricket matches, Roland.
Yes, I mean, when I say inferior, I didn't mean that in a derogatory way to Ireland. What I meant was that Ireland's experience at the international level, you know, before that, the only teams that were beaten in the series is Afghanistan and Zimbabwe. So really,
I don't think they'd won a one-day series since somewhere around 2019, around in the middle there. So yeah, I mean, I take your point. As I said, I accept that they're inferior because of the rankings, etc., and experience. I was just making the point, not so much to you, but to John Public, because I've heard comments to John Public that, you know, yes, they may be ranked below us, but don't underrate these guys because it's Ireland. We came along hearing about England playing cricket, Australia, India, but everybody played a first match at some point in time. You know, so it seems as though some of us can't come to terms with the fact that we've now got Ireland, we've got Afghanistan, we've got Bangladesh, we've got Zimbabwe, we've got all these teams that some of us didn't come along and find. And there's no some of us feel that these guys should never learn to play cricket. I don't really understand it. Somebody said to me in the first game when Brooks scored 93, I don't mind is against Ireland, I'm still happy for him. 93 runs in an international game is 93 runs.
It's absolutely an international game. I mean, I don't subscribe to that type of thinking by those individuals, because Ireland are playing international cricket, and Ireland want to get up the table. And, you know, Ireland would have come here, you know, thinking that, you know, there's a good chance that we could perform well against the West Indies, because obviously West Indies haven't been performing that well. So, you know, they would have come here with a lot of confidence. I think what makes the win so good for Ireland and so bad for West Indies is that, you know, Ireland had to go through what they did. Part of their preparation was disrupted in the USA.
Yes, the COVID situation, yes.
COVID situation. They had 5 players with COVID. They had matches postponed. So they came into the
as far as the one-day series in US was totally cancelled.
Yeah, it was cancelled. They played 1 or 2 games. The others had to be cancelled. So they've come here totally undercooked. Just played 1 warm-up game. The captain and best player, Andy Balbirnie, couldn't play any game at all.
Yeah, he played the first game. And batted well too. But then he and Sterling never played together.
No, but Sterling, obviously, because Sterling had COVID before.
Right. So as soon as they got Sterling fit again, Balbirnie was out, and Sterling actually had to take over the captaincy. So a lot worked against them. So you're quite right. They won against the odds.
Well, they did, because with all the lack of preparation and not having the best players on the park, etc., you've got to give it to them that they were still able to pull out 2 very good performances, and particularly 2 good batting performances chasing. Even though they only won by 2 wickets this last game, for me, really, the margin of victory was far greater than that, because, you know, 150, 160 for 2, really, you know, against a better opponent, you know, he would have lost by 8 wickets. So, you know, even though it was only 2-wicket victory, it was still by a considerable margin in my estimation.
You know, there's something that annoys me on end. This whole thing, I'm going back again to this, and I'm not referring to the comment you made. You have made a very sensible and logical case to show why Ireland should not be the favorites. But I'm talking about people who are dismissive. It's because it's Ireland. It's called Ireland. It doesn't matter if Ireland are able to attract Smith, Warner, Labashang, bring back Shane Warne, get Boland and all, and play for Ireland. Is Ireland, so they're not supposed to beat anybody. That's the mentality of some people, and I think it's sickening. I'm sure you're aware. We've celebrated it. I came along hearing it. I wasn't around when it happened. I came along hearing it. Sir Everton Weeks, the late Sir Everton Weeks now, and the 5 consecutive Test centuries. We've all heard about that, haven't we?
We have?
Yes. But I wonder how many people are aware that when that happened, India had never won a Test match. And I don't say that to devalue the performance because I know better, But it's as though people think that, having new teams on here, in the cricket is something amazing and new. There've always been new teams. It had to start somewhere. And there was a time when West Indies came in and had to and struggled to win.
Well, they struggled for many years.
Many years. So I really think that we need to get past this dismissive attitude when it comes to teams that have not been around as long as West Indies, because that's as much as we can say, Roland Butcher, that these teams have not been around as long as the West Indies. But when we play Afghanistan, are we really favorites against Afghanistan anymore? In fact, Afghanistan are they ranked above us in T20 as far as I recall? So we've got to get with the program and recognize where we are, and get rid of this arrogant, this misplaced arrogance, I would call it. Arrogance is probably a good thing if you can live up to it. But we've got to get rid of this misplaced arrogance and dissing teams because they've not been around as long as we have, but yet they're beating us on the park and making us look stupid.
Yeah, we are in no position whatsoever to dismiss any team that we play against, and because our performances don't suggest that we are a top side, that when we're playing against Ireland and Bangladesh and Zimbabwe and Ireland and the Netherlands, that we can say it's only those teams. No, you have to play. You're playing against an international team who wants to improve, who wants to get up the ladder, who want to put one over you. And for me, actually, I think you've got to take those sides even more seriously than when you play against the likes of the Australians and the English, etc., because you're accustomed playing against them. In the past, you've performed well against them. You have a certain standing in the game against them. But when you play the lower sides, there is an uncertainty in playing against those teams.
You've got more to lose unless the game.
Exactly. So
even in terms of how points are allocated, not for the Test Championship or the One Day World Cup, but in terms of rankings, you obviously, you don't want to lose to people who are ranked below you. That doesn't help you at all.
Well, no, you need to be very much more on top of your game. And I mean, I always say that, when you are playing against a weaker opponent, right? You may be number one, but you should play the game as if you're number two. And if you do that, don't play them as if you're number one, because that will breed complacency and errors and mistakes and bad decisions. You have to play them as if you're the number two team. Mm-hmm. And the number two team, the underdog team, is always fighting to get out from that position. So, I don't subscribe to this.
You've got to be hungry then. It seems as though you're saying you've got to be very hungry.
Of course, you've got to be hungrier against the weaker team, because that's the banana skin. Mm-hmm. And it is, when you
they're coming for you because they realize this is their chance now to make a name for themselves. So they're coming at you.
They want to make a name for themselves.
There's going to be no complacency. There's going to be no complacency on their end for sure.
No,
the complacency may step in if you're playing Australia or India, because they've had it over you in recent times. So I really take what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, against a team like Ireland, I mean, they want to make a name for themselves. So you've got to take them seriously. So a loss against them is going to be more damaging for you than a loss against Australia or a loss against India or against England. You know, it's going to be damaging because the game or the people says that you are supposed to beat them.
Mhm.
That's what it says. You still got to go and perform, but the feeling is before the game starts, oh, you've got to beat them. No, you have to beat them because otherwise, you know, what is happening now and the way people feel about it is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, there's one other thing I really want to bring up as it relates to that series. Did you get a chance to hear the West Indies captain, his comments after the defeat?
I didn't actually hear the interview, but I've heard people commenting on, you know, what he said. I mean, I understand it was something to do with the batting and
The part that I was making reference to is interesting, and I don't really understand. He seems to be quite rightly criticizing. I don't know if criticizing is the right word. Addressing the batting, the shortcomings in the batting, but then he goes on to say that he has confidence in himself and that he knows that he can, to use my terms, turn it around and achieve what he needs to achieve, but it's to get the others to that point. Now, if he wants to get the others to that point, I'm not sure which others he means, because Shea Hope, Evan Lewis, and Puran all have decent white ball averages. Okay, so I would hope that he doesn't want to get them to his 24, 25 average. And the guys who are not performing right now, and who may be below that, I don't think that is a meaningful objective to try to get them up to the average of 24, 25. So I found that laughable. And I think it is disturbing that at that level, we can, you know, have such I would say, a misguided view of reality. That's just my opinion. Feel free to.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you think about it, really, you know, that comment. Just put yourself in the position of the rest of the team. Now, you know, you're supposed to want to follow your leader through thick and thin. But if there is any doubt, and it's expressed by your leader that you all are not up to scratch, you're not up to the mark. No, there's not a lot of incentive there to really go through a brick wall for your leader. So, you know, he's going to have to be very careful in terms of, you know, the support, you know, he gets from the players, because, you know, he's questioning in a subtle way, you know, whether they can actually stack up to what he considers is acceptable. And that, you know, that can be to the detriment to the team and those individuals, because, you know, they will not be as hungry as they should be.
Yeah, well, I would hope that maybe he will exercise a bit more thought in future in terms of how he expresses these things. But if that's his opinion, he has the right to his opinion, as do you, and the same with me and all of us. The only difference is that my opinion and your opinion is not likely to affect the 10 other guys going down the field at any given point in time. So that's it.
But for that, one thing I find very disturbing these days is that when you get beaten by a team, what is wrong with saying on the day the opposition were better than we were, even if the opposition is supposedly a weaker opposition? They were better than us on this day, and we need to get better. I mean, that should suffice, because why you have to go into all of these other antics and then eventually.
But to me, those are dressing room issues. Those are dressing room issues.
Yeah. I mean, when you get behind closed doors, you can really do what you have to do. But I think certainly for the media, you know, it would just be very simple. Look, we did not perform well against Ireland. All credit to Ireland. They put us under pressure, etc., etc. They won the game. Yeah, we need to do better. and we look forward to better performances. That doesn't take away anything from Ireland's good performance. It doesn't degrade your players in any way. It still really keeps them in the frame of mind to want to keep pushing forward. But too often these days, I find that discussions are too much about your players and very little about giving credit to the opposition, for winning. It's always the opposition won because you were bad.
Mm. And it's even worse, as I said, as I alluded to before, when you have been a picture of mediocrity yourself, and then you paint a picture that suggests you've gone into the field with soldiers who are less than capable, when you are as incapable as anybody else. And I don't say that to be unkind. I say that because that's what the numbers tell us.
Yes, and one day you will look back and you will see no one. It will just be you going forward.
Anyhow, Roland, thanks again for joining us here on Anything Cricket Let's Talk. Look forward to hearing from you and seeing you again very soon. Still lots of cricket to be played. England already here, and we'll be back. Well, not necessarily the same players, but we have the test version of it in a couple of months as well. So still a lot of cricket to be played, and we look forward to hearing from you. Meanwhile, we'll be following you very closely with this initiative with the girls' cricket.
Thank you, Philip. Yes, looking forward to the 5 T20s against England, and of course, that test match in March as well.
We'll be back on Anything Cricket Let's Talk.
Don't let annoying pests bug you. Lick them for 6. Omega Pest Control is the perfect solution. We are experts in termite and pest eradication, specialized mosquito treatments, foundation, residential, commercial, and industrial treatments. Call us day or night, or visit us at our office located at Fieldside Drive, Long Gaps in Michael. Omega Pest Control. Call 425-5954, 231-6526, or email us at opcl@caribsurf.com.
Have your most precious moments captured in a flash. Call Flash Drive Media, specialists in photography, videography, and streaming services, and much more. Call Flash Drive Media.
Now to the edited version of our broadcast aired last week. Well, we're fortunate once again to have the company of Mali Richards. And of course, Mali, you would have made your own way, so to speak, but no denying the son of the great Saviv, certainly one of the biggest names in cricket in the region. And I say in the region first, but obviously on the world stage as well. He would have made a really remarkable contribution during his playing days. We've heard from him as a commentator as well. And you are basically following in his footsteps because you made what I believe was your debut in terms of commentary just last year. I hope I'm not selling you short. Were you tinkering in commentary before that?
No, you're right. It was the Sri Lanka series last year, 8.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so welcome once again to Anything Cricket Let's Talk, and a happy new year to you and yours. How's your dad doing?
He's good. Firstly, let me say happy new year to you as well. Happy new year to all your listeners in Barbados and around the region and around the world as well.
Mm-hmm. And I know you're very passionate about West Indies cricket because we've had discussions in another forum. Ongoing discussions, sometimes very heated, sometimes very passionate, sometimes very emotional, but all sorts of things. I think that's fair to say.
Yes, yeah, for sure. It's quite enjoyable though, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's enjoyable at the same time. You know, we're all pretty passionate about West Indies cricket. You know, I'm coming to learn about the passionate fans around the region who just want to see the team putting in respectable performances that they can actually be proud of.
And we have had a fair share of frustration. I suppose 2021 had its encouraging moments, and we'll all be hoping for a brighter 2022. But Mali, I find that many of us, we use the word passionate and words like emotional and so on. But even with that passion that we're talking about, I don't know that that alone will get West Indies cricket where it needs to be. Yes, you may say, well, if the passion is coming from the fans, what harm can it do? But I suspect that that passion, which is not always, I mean, the passion is good, but as I said, we need more than that. And I'm hoping that at the start of this year, through Anything Cricket Let's Talk, that we can make this sort of impact in terms of ideas, in terms of suggestions that will help move West Indies cricket forward. Am I biting off more than we can hopefully chew?
I mean, you've got to take it on. You know, everything's a challenge, and West Indies cricket is definitely a challenge. It's unique in the sense of all these different islands. It's the only thing, I think I've said this before, it's the only thing we do as a region together is West Indies cricket. And it's very unique with the different cultures. Even when you get to the leewards and the windwards, you break that up even more. There are islands within that region. So it's quite a unique situation. It's very difficult to manage, but I think it definitely can be done.
Mali, you had the privilege of representing your country in cricket, and of course we know that Antigua and the Leeward Islands have produced some of the outstanding players. I mentioned your dad a short while ago, but there were others. And of course, you know, we talk about people like Sir Andy Roberts and Sir Richie Richardson and people of that nature. But that has not really been the story in recent times. Why is that?
I mean, how much time have you got, Philip? I think it's a combination of things, to be honest. It's not just one particular issue; it's a combination. And I think first and foremost, with the declining fortunes of the West Indies team on that world stage, we've seen a decrease in participation as that's gone on. You know, especially I'm speaking from the Antigua and Leewards in particular. Not as many people play cricket as they used to. You know, so in that aspect, the talent pool in itself is even smaller than it was maybe in the 90s, 10, 15 years ago. So, or early 2000s. So, yeah, it's a combination of things. It's participation, but it's also administration. I think administration is actually the key factor in this, in terms of not following or not continuing what had been done in the past. You mentioned Sir Richie, you mentioned Sir Andy. You've got Winston Benjamin, Curtly Ambrose, Dave Joseph, Sylvester Joseph, Kerry Jeremy. There was a production line, you know, of players coming out of Antigua that served the Leeward, Antigua first, Leewards, and also the West Indies. But that production line is not the same. And I think administration has a lot to do with it, as well as the decreased participation.
Specifically, what about the administration do you think has been problematic and has, stopped the growth of that production line?
I think as we've seen the not the fortunes, but the increased financial profits in cricket. As we've seen that, and as we've gone along, we've seen, I wouldn't say unscrupulous, but we've seen different people coming into cricket administration. You know, before it was cricket people. Yes, you needed the business side as well. So you had people that had that experience. You know, I can think of Enoch Lewis, who worked at Scotiabank for years and is now a director of West Indies cricket. So you've always had that. But I think we've had people from outside that realm come into the cricket that that haven't necessarily understood exactly what it takes to develop players and necessarily understand what had come before them and just what they're tasked with when they come into this game in terms of administration, be it a president, vice president, secretary, whatsoever.
So what really can be done? I mean, do you create regulations that determine the type of people who could be administrators? How would one get around addressing that? Does it require more education then of these potential administrators?
Exactly. I think education on both sides, you know, education from the side of that person coming into this field, and also just education of the sport. West Indies cricket has had a rich history. Antigua cricket has a rich history. Leeward Islands cricket has a rich history. When you come into this field in terms of administration, you've got to recognize that. And what we also see is everything geared towards winning an election as opposed to actual development or actual policies. For example, I remember being in England in the early 2000s, Philip, and English cricket, was on the wane at that time a bit. It was down in the dumps, and the English Cricket Board, the England Cricket Board, the ECB, they actually came up with a plan where they actually devised a plan that what they wanted was to have 3 instantly identifiable players to the English public. It was at the time where soccer was really forging ahead and dominating headlines. And they wanted to have 3 instantly identifiable players to the English public. They went about, they devised their plan, and in no time there was Kevin Peterson, Monty Panesar, and I forget who the other one is, Andrew Flintoff. They have 3 stars. If they're stars, if you think about it, if they're stars, that means they're actually performing and doing something on the field as well. So everything went hand in hand. We don't seem to have these kind of plans, developmental plans, especially in Antigua and the Leewards. We don't seem to have these developmental plans at all in terms when it comes to the cricket.
Look, this cricket problem is not new. And since we've been struggling, and many people trace that back to 1995 when there was that, obviously it was gradual to some extent, but a significant turn for the worse, so to speak, around 1995. And since that year, we've had Shivnarine Chandapal, we've had the great Brian Lara. We've also had some of the other names you called who were still playing in that post-1995 period. So why would it have been difficult then to sell West Indies cricket in terms of stardom?
No, that's what I'm saying. It wasn't. But the fortunes of the Windies, like you say, was declining a little bit before 95, but a lot of people mark 95 as the moment. But since then, we're in 2021 now, 30 years or so. We are really, really struggling to get that foothold in our region. West Indies cricket is still viable because it's of the brand that was made, like you said, prior to 95. But and it's viable today because of the overseas fans as well, and a lot of overseas fans, the West Indies team is their second team more often than not. Some actually support the West Indies more often than not because of what they remember in their childhood and the like. So it's more of a foothold in our region. I can give another example. When Sir Alan Stanford had his T20 tournament, this is before the millions game, the game for the millions. When he was actually having this tournament, you could actually see the effect it was having on the people in Antigua and the wider region. I can speak about Antigua because I was here at the time. Okay. And you could see it was increased participation in the game. Little kids were playing cricket everywhere. You hadn't seen that in a few years. And with the advent of the Stanford T20, these kids now looked and saw like, wow, we can actually make a living playing for our country. It didn't seem like so many steps away, Antigua, Leewards, West Indies. It didn't seem that far, and that on its own single-handedly increased participation in Antigua for at least 3-4 years. And then since that, it's gone back down again. And also with the poor fortunes of the Leeward Islands team as well. It's just even, participation around the regions. The Leeward Islands region is.
Yeah, well, the Stanford tournament, that came to an end. But T20 cricket has continued to, I guess one can say, thrive, first of all, through the Cricket West Indies tournament. And then, no, it's not Cricket West Indies anymore, but it's marketed the biggest party in sport, which I've got my own views on that marketing policy. So,
Right,
so why,
right.
why with the presence of T20 and players still making money? Look, let's face it, you don't even necessarily have to be good now to make money from cricket because of T20. So why is it then that you find in Antigua, for example, which you can speak about with authority, why would it be difficult to get youngsters playing?
Because in the past, they never had to attract players to the game. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Now it's actually time to do some work. Now you've got to market. Your marketing department has to be top notch. Now you've got to bring people who wouldn't normally come to the game or who would have chosen a different sport. Got to get creative to get increased participation. That's the only way.
Let's back up a bit, because you identified, I mean, you accept that there are a number of reasons why we are where we are in West Indies cricket, but you identified administration as one. So if you're going to look at that a little bit more closely, and we talked about maybe the need for education. You know, there are some countries where you don't really get involved in coaching and even administration unless you've got some sort of paper from some sort of institution saying that you've got some sort of qualification in this area of expertise. The fact that we don't go that route, do you think we're suffering because of it? So you get people who may be well-meaning, but not necessarily well-directed in how they go about things?
Exactly, and I always say, as well-intentioned as you are, show me the results. And at the end of the day, it's a results business. You can have the best intentions in the world, but you've still got to get the job done. And I think, yeah, you're right, Philip. It's almost too easy, you know, to climb the administration ladder in cricket, and a lot of people as well. At the end of the day, cricket is the number 2 team sport in the world, behind of soccer. It's the number 2 football. You know, it's the number 2 team sport in the world. So it's got a lot of people make money from cricket, and a lot of people see it as an avenue, not only in terms of increasing their profile, but also they use it to branch off into different things, politics and the like. You know, so like you say, we've got to be more stringent with the people that we let into cricket administration, because, you know, these are the people that make the decisions. It affects what happens on the field. It affects your development programs, whether you have any or not. It just affects the overall product.
How can we really do that, though? I mean, how can you realistically control who offers themselves, you know, to be a cricket administrator, especially when we're in an era where the perks seem to be attracting people? I remember the days in another sport in which I'm involved, where the administrators would pull their pockets virtually to make sure that a particular tour comes off or that a player can benefit from some opportunity. And sadly, we're now in an era where we've got administrators who seem more concerned about what they can get out of the sport. Now, I don't know the extent to which you would suggest that is the reality in cricket, but it's certainly the reality in a number of other sports.
Yeah, I mean, it's human nature. It's a reality across sports. You think of agents in football, you know, some of them may actually have the best interests of the footballer at heart, but a lot of them don't. They're just interested in making moves, trying to get transfers and make as much money as possible. But yeah, like you say, the perks, I don't know how we go about it, to be honest, but we've got the people around. I think some of the people aren't interested as well. But what I find as well with some of these, I don't know if it's the same in Barbados at times as well, is some of these people, they actually get to the position, president, whatever, and you never have another election for time. You know, you just keep hearing that they can't form a quorum or whatever, and it's just no elections and no real development going on.
Or you have an election where hardly anybody knows that it was going to take place.
Oh yeah, or where hardly anyone knows about it, or you turn up and they're just new members out of the blue that you've never seen before. You know, these kind of, you know, backhanded tactics. I mean, it's something that's plaguing our cricket, and we've got to get honest. We've got to get honest and real about it, Philip. We can't be afraid to ruffle feathers as well, you know, because we've got the cricket at heart. We know we've got the cricket at heart. That's what we're about. It's not about personal motivations, and that's what's plaguing plaguing our cricket administration at this time.
So there you heard it, Molly Richards. Deighton?
I just want to sort of set the context in which I'm looking at things. There are a lot of things we can do for West Indies cricket, or we can suggest that should be done, which may be long-term projects. Everything I want to look at tonight, I'm looking at in the context of things that can be done now and give us results in a short time in terms of improving what we have on the ground now and improving players at a personal level. So having said that, let me sort of pick up on a few points Mali made. First of all, he's bang on with one of the things that I've noted, that less people are participating in the game across the region. And when I say less, it is not a small decrease. Let me give you a quick anecdote. In the early 1980s, I was talking to an English visitor to Barbados who said to me that it was amazing that driving around Barbados, it looked as though they saw a cricket game almost every 100 yards. And they made the point that it wasn't always an organized game with people in whites, but it was some form of cricket. And I think we all identify with that. You'd see boys playing softball cricket in the street. You'd drive a little further up and you'll see a tape ball game. You pass by the beach, you'd see beach cricket. And every cricket ground you pass by on a Saturday or Sunday, you'd see some kind of game, a food match, an organized match, a competition game. But there was a huge amount of cricket played. Contrast that with these days when you drive around Barbados and you could drive for a long time and not see any form of cricket being played. And that I use that anecdotally to give me the feel for the fact that we simply play a lot less cricket. So I will take Mali's point, but I'll approach it from a slightly different point of view. He said it requires marketing to get increased participation, and I don't disagree with that. I think we can go ahead and we can do that. But that increased participation obviously should start from the lower levels, and it will take a while for that to show positive results. Anytime you're going to build participation in a sport, you should build it at the school level. And once that bug bites you, as you know, Philip, we all play cricket at school, and once it gets into your system, then we've got you for life. So that is a long-term project, and I agree with him. I'm not disagreeing with him at all. But what I would like to also see happening from a marketing perspective is this. Let me give you an example. If you take Jamar Hamilton, who's a wicketkeeper for the Leewards. When I first saw Jamar Hamilton, I was very impressed by him. Very busy batsman, very difficult to bowl at because he didn't let you stray off length, and he was scoring very quickly all the time. And then he got into the A team. Over the recent years, you can see that his performances have fallen away. He's not making runs at the regional level the way he used to when he started. Now, that is not so surprising when you take Mali's comment in which he said there hasn't been red ball cricket in the Leewards for 10 years. I know that the Leeward Islands competition doesn't play anymore between the islands. And I believe that in most of the islands, there is no real red ball competition. So if you are Jamar Hamilton and you're not with a West Indies A team or in a West Indies camp, then what do? Here's what I suggest. And this is where marketing comes in. And this is not just for Jamar Hamilton. This should be done all across the region. I think the authorities in Antigua should be saying, let's go out there and find sponsors to say, I want to associate your name with Jamar Hamilton. Because what we want to do is to send Jamar Hamilton, when he's not playing regional cricket or he's not representing the West Indies, to play in leagues around the Caribbean. If there's no league in Antigua, why can't he come and play in Barbados with a ticket from a sponsor or from the West Indies Cricket Board? And somebody sponsors his accommodation while he's here. But the point being that he would come here and play a season of cricket before the regional season, so that when he goes into the regional season, he has some preparation under his belt, other than the nets. that applies all around the region. We know that there's organized cricket in Jamaica. We know there's organized cricket in Trinidad. There's I think smaller leagues in Guyana. But the point is, wherever there is organized cricket of a reasonable level being played, people who aspire to represent the West Indies, but who reside in the leewards or the windwards where there's not a lot of local red ball cricket played on a competitive basis over a season, why can't they not be sponsored so that when they're not playing regional cricket, they have something to go back to keep their skills sharp? You find a lot of these players, when they come back to regional level, they play 10 regional games. And the first 6 games are basically reacquainting themselves with that level of cricket, are reacquainting themselves with red ball cricket. So they might get a few good scores towards the end of the season. I don't think that's good enough. I think they need to play more. Any sportsman needs to practice his craft on an ongoing basis. If you're a runner, you need to run. If you're a cricketer, you need to play cricket, not just in the nets. You need to actually play competitive cricket to hone your skills, especially your mental skills, which is where a lot of the time I find our batting is deficient. If you're batting in the nets, you don't have to think out game scenarios, game situations. You don't have to think about what's my tactical approach here. All I'm doing in the nets is hitting balls. So I would like to see the local authorities in these islands, like Grenada, like Antigua, like St. Kitts, where you might not have a lot of red ball cricket, doing the marketing these players to local companies to say, look, I'm going to run a thing in the newspaper on you saying, look, you have sponsored Jamar Hamilton to go to play in Jamaica to keep his skills up, or even to go and play further afield than that. But the point is, they need to play more cricket. You remember in the days of Vic Richards and our great players, whenever they were not playing for the West Indies, they were either playing local cricket, certainly in Barbados, the Barbadian players, or they were playing in the English leagues. So they were constantly honing their craft. So I would take that marketing from that angle. I don't disagree with Mali about bringing more people back to the game, but that's a longer term program, and I think we should put them both in there. But the short term program where you get quicker benefits, and I would really pray that I see a player like Jamar Hamilton raise his game again. Next time we see a regional tournament, that he's averaging 40, because I really liked what I saw of him when he first started playing cricket at regional level. So I think Mali was on the ball there with that participation issue. I believe that one of the things that we must do in the West Indies is really be serious about setting standards. Now, you're going to play an interview later, which I know that subject is going to come up, but I'm going to touch on it now, where if a player starting at school level finds that he's better than his teammates, and he scores 30 in a game or 45, and that's better than the others, he has two choices. He can accept that he's better than the others and be satisfied with 30. Or him and his coaches can set standards to say, how good can this guy be? Should we be aiming to have him averaging 40 at the end of the season, or averaging 50 if he's good enough? The point is, are we pushing our players to be as good as they can be at every level, and getting them into the mindset, which is important, the mindset that you practice yourselves from the early stages of any sport tends to stay with you when you get to the senior levels. And if you have that mindset that I always want to be as good as I possibly can be, and not just good enough or just better than the others, then that's something else. Now, recently we've had a lot of discussion about fitness standards, and that's the only discussion that we have had. What about technical standards? What about performance standards? You get what I'm saying? There must be standards on every aspect of the game, not only on your fitness. Because if I am the fittest player in the world and I'm averaging 17, am I any good to the West Indies? If you permit me, let me talk a little bit about what I heard from Jimmy Adams. Do you remember in a recent, I think our last program, we were talking about selection, and I said to you, selection cannot be seen in the context of a game or a series. I was talking about a plan for a player.
Yes,
to say that when I pick this guy, he has to. We have to know what's our plan for him. Is he going to be our test opener? Is he going to be all formats cricketer? And if he is, what role does he play in my team based on the skill set that he has and his approach to the game? What's his role in my various teams? And thirdly, what is our plan to help him to fulfill that role? I talked about that. And I saw a recent interview in which Sean Devers was interviewing Jimmy Adams, and I was very heartened. If you had heard his interview, someone might think that I had heard him before and I was copying from him. Let me tell you a few of the things he said, which I really picked up on that I thought were important. He said, and here was the first one that I really liked. He said, when a player comes to you, he said, usually if you're talking about West Indies level, you're looking at these players from around the under-19 stage. So when a guy is in the under-19 stage, and especially when he's about to leave that to come into senior cricket, he said, and he was, funny enough, he was talking in relation to fitness. And he said, people always talk about fitness, but he said, when you have a young player, that player should be assessed physically, technically, mentally, and you should produce a profile. And he said the reason for that profile is to answer one question, which is the question you must answer when you start with this guy. And he said that question must be, where am I? I thought that was fantastic. So basically, as a young player, you assess me and you sit with me, and I ask myself the question, where am I? And that means, where am I in terms of my physical abilities? Where am I in terms of my technical abilities? Where am I in terms of my mental skills, my mental toughness, my ability to read a game situation and determine how to act? All of these things must be answered. And then, he said, when we know where you are, then we can build a program to take you where we need you to go. Now, that was music to my ears, because I think this is something else that we can also do now. Technically, and I'm going to copy what I remember of Jimmy Adams' words. He was saying, for instance, does this player have a difficulty with the sweep? Does he have a problem playing the cut shot, getting into the right positions? You understand what I'm saying? We assess him technically at that level of detail. We assess him mentally when we see him out there in the middle of and see how he responds to pressure, how he works out game tactics. And having seen those things, now we know, here's the program for this guy. And it can't be the same for Philip or Deighton. They have different issues, different strengths, different weaknesses. And so we should be working on that. So if we do this, then we're fine. But we have two problems with that. I was pleased again to hear him say that it must start at the franchise level. He said there must be ongoing development of franchise coaches. Now you will remember I also told you in the past that we have franchises who will do poorly one year and the next year, and they have the same coach. Now, either we are doing something to develop that coach, or we're changing that coach as far as I'm concerned, because that means that the franchise standards are not high enough. If I am coaching a franchise team and our average score over the course of a season is under 200, then I'm failing. So what do? Jimmy Adams says we must have ongoing development of these coaches. And I agree with him. He says, and here's his reason, and I think it's a wonderful reason. He says, so that they can help to improve players at every stage along the player pathway. Fantastic. So that means when they're at the youth level, this coach should be able to help them. When they reach the regional level, he should be able to help them. When they're playing in the test team and they're developing issues, I remember I spoke about it before, when he comes back to that territory, this coach should be able to help him. Those are things we can do now, Philip. That doesn't require a long-term program. We can start improving our coaches, because we have a lot of coaches who may have some basic coaching certificates, and you go in the nets and you see them all do the same thing. They know how to set up some cones and do target bowling. So now this is all the idea of having a plan for a player wherever he is. And the second challenge that Jimmy Adams has, which he obviously is trying to identify through these franchise coaches, is the fact that we always have this situation where we bring players together at West Indies level 2 weeks before a series and have a camp. In recent times, we've had these best versus best games a couple of weeks before a tournament or before a series. And then you play the series, and then those players run off in different directions. Some go to play in 2020 tournaments. Some go to other things. Some go home and do nothing. I'm saying to you, those players who go home, the West Indies should be constantly in contact with the territory about the program for this player. Whatever level he's at. Is he at under 19 level? Is he, in fact, here's where this program is really, really important right now. Is he in the national teams and losing his play because he has a technical difficulty? Let's take an example. We went to New Zealand about 2 years ago, was it 3 years? And we were basically intimidated by short bowling. They bounced us out. We struggled against a barrage of short bowling. And my question is, so was there a program? I don't know. I haven't seen it. When these players come back, what are we doing? Because think about it, Philip. If you look at international test cricket now, the Australian pace attack is awesome. India has some very, very testing seam bowlers. South Africa just exposed us against their seam bowlers down here in the Caribbean. England has some good seamers. So wherever we go, we are going to come up against good seam bowlers. And if they're discovered that we're struggling with short bowling, that's what we're going to get. So my question is then, what's the program? If Deighton Smith is one of the players who's struggling against the short bowling, when he comes back to Barbados, what's the program? Who is working with him? What are they doing with him? What other issues does he need to address while he's there? Does he have a fitness issue? Do we need to talk about his mental approach to the game? Is he getting in, looking good, and then getting out? I'll give you another example of a person I've watched for a couple of years, and I don't think we've ever got it right with him. Kieran Powell. I studied Kieran Powell for a while, and I recognized that a lot of times he got in and looked really good, left the ball outside the off stump, looked technically sound, very good defensively, but, and you can check this out if you don't, Philip, go back and you'll see a number of innings, when he gets to around about 90 minutes, he makes an error. And to me, that is a mental issue. That has to be about concentration. I don't know if a little more fitness will help him concentrate better, or if he just needs some kind of mental skills coach to work him through that period. A lot of the time I found that after he batted 90 minutes, somewhere between that 90-minute 2-hour mark, you'd find he'd bat a morning and then he'd get out just before lunch. He would just lose his concentration. In the field, he's a reasonably good slip catcher, but you'd find that if he's in the field for a long, coming towards the end of a session, one goes to him, he puts it down. That's a concentration issue. So where is the plan for this player? How does that plan pass between the different levels he's at? When he leaves the national team, who takes over at the territorial level, and how smooth is that transition? What's the communication between the two levels, and what's the agreement in terms of what needs to be done? I won't call his name, but when I was in charge at the BCA, we had a player who I've rarely seen many players work as hard as him. Every day almost he was in the nets. He was working hard. He was batting beautifully, and he went to test level. Started his test career with a bang, made a couple of hundreds and whatnot. He did really well, and then after that, I never saw him at Kensington again. Then he went to England, and he was exposed against the in-swinger, and he did really poorly in that series. And after that, his test career fell away, and he just went out of the international game. My point was, when he came back here, where was the program? I never saw him in the nets here again. He was now a West Indies player, so he was not answerable to the BCA. So there has to be some agreement between the West Indies board and the territorial level, where his contract says that he will be given a program by the West Indies coaches, and he will carry out that program with the Barbados coaches when he's at home.
Don't let annoying pests bug you. Lick them for 6. Omega Pest Control is the perfect solution. We are experts in termite and pest eradication, specialized mosquito treatments, foundation, residential, commercial, and industrial treatments. Call us day or night, or visit us at our office located at Fieldside Drive, Long Gap, St. Michael. Omega Pest Control. Call 425-5954, 231-6526, or email us at opcl@caribsurf.com.
Have your most precious moments captured in a flash. Call Flash Drive Media, specialists in photography, videography, and streaming services, and much more. Call Flash Drive Media. Healing, nourishing, restoring. Amazing products, essential to provide healthy skin. My kind of beauty. Let it be yours.
Thanks to Deighton Smith. Thanks to Flash Drive Media, Omega Pest Control, and My Kind of Beauty. More from Deighton when you join us again on Anything Cricket. Let's talk.